Welcome back to Buckeye Blitz. We've got Dave Holmes and Adam King with us from 10 TV, along with Timmy Hall and former Buckeye receiver DeVere Posey. You listen to him on 97.1 The Fan. Adam, stakes are through the roof. Second-ranked Ohio State, third-ranked Michigan. Which coach wants this more?
Wants it more? Needs it more? Ryan Day. Ryan Day is 1-1 against Michigan, and that, it sounds crazy to say, but if things don't go the Buckeyes' way on Saturday, he has a losing record against Michigan. He's probably out of the playoffs. It's the second straight year they don't make the Big Ten championship, and you probably don't get a Heisman with CJ. And then you look back at the last 2 years of the Ryan Day era, and you say, what do we have to show for it? And I, for one, think that Ryan Day is 100 times the better coach than Jim Harbaugh. But I think there is a world where if Ryan Day goes out there and things don't go the way, we think the weather's going to be nice, but if the run game doesn't get going, you can get a little freaked out. Maybe you're trying to figure things out, and all of a sudden you're in your own head about just how big this game is, and you're in your own head about the pressure that Buckeye Nation feels. I mean, there is an expectation, and we hear it from players, we hear it from coaches, that you are representing the entire state of Ohio when you take the field in the game. And I think Ryan Day, probably for the first time in his career, feels that. And I think in order to feel that, you have to lose. You have to feel the pressure. He said the last 365 days have been the longest year of his life. And I believe it. Because when you look at them walking off that field against Michigan, I mean, you talk about the born on third baseline. It's his chance to respond to that. It's his chance to show that this Buckeye team, because it's not just a win over Michigan. It's a win over the number 3 team in the country. It's a win that puts you in the playoffs and puts you really squarely on the door of a national championship run. And I think it's crazy that 60 Minutes is going to decide all of Ryan Day's legacy on Saturday.
DeVere, I got a news flash for you. Coaches try to get into people's heads.
Of course, yeah.
My question is, they had some chatter up north of the border.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh, is he trying to get in Ryan Day's head? And will Ryan Day try to get in his head?
I don't think Ryan Day is that kind of coach. I believe he's a second-half guru. He's an adjustment guy. He needs to keep his head screwed on tight because obviously Michigan is going to have a game plan drawn up for CJ. They're going to try and get him out of the pocket. They're going to want him to run. And I just think offensively, we're going to have some answers at halftime. He's a dry erase god. I think, you get in there and he always makes adjustment. It's a reason we're a second-half team. It's a reason why we've been able to cover and beat people by double digits this season. So I think Ryan Day, if he can keep his focus and not get too much into the bulletin board material, he prevails on Saturday.
Dave, which team is more battle-tested heading into this game? And does it matter in this game?
I don't think it matters much. I don't think there's a huge discrepancy. The win over Notre Dame is certainly looking better in hindsight if we're talking about battle-tested. And that was good because that was a hard-hitting team at home. It's going to be similar to what you're going to get against Michigan. But the Wolverines are better than Notre Dame. So this is the biggest test. I don't know if either team is battle-tested enough. I think it just matters what you're going to do against each other given 12 months of rage. Can the Buckeyes control it? Can they actually go out and improve? Because there is that risk of going out there a little too hyped up and trying a little too hard and getting nervous and you fall behind early and now you start pressing. I mean, this is what happens in this game. You start to freak out and panic when things don't go your way because it matters more. So as long as Ohio State can use the home crowd to its advantage, stay calm, and just have a good, solid first half, I think they'll be okay. But you don't want to fall behind 10-0 or something at the end of the first. And oh, my goodness, then you start thinking about the last year.
Timmy, we know there's pressure that goes with this game, and no one knows it better than Ryan Day. With that said, are the Ohio State fans maybe a little spoiled? They've had a pretty good run here. This Buckeye football team is currently ranked second in the country, 11-0. But if you hear some of the fans, if you look at some of the comments, they're complaining and they're worried and all this, and because of they struggled or it was not an easy win at Penn State. They struggled at Northwestern. The weather was part of it. They struggled at Maryland. These other programs do give out scholarships too.
We don't want to hear any of that noise, right? This is Ohio State, right? This is the economic engine of the state. This is the Buckeyes right here. So I feel like there's this big divide. There's a vast divide where you could be overly critical and not appreciate any kind of win, and then you can just pretend that everything is going to be fine because there's 5-star athletes and there's no problems when, reality is going to be somewhere in the middle. I tend to bleed a little bit more to the critical eye because of how many spoils they have, like you said. So it's what are you going to do with those? You can make the case that when you look at the other power programs at the top of college football, you can get into this discussion and you compare them to, say, Duke in basketball or Kansas, whatever you want to pick, right? Has Ohio State won enough at the big level, championships, not just getting past this team? That's the great thing about it. You have to get past this team to then go a step further to catch, not this year, it's not a Clemson or a Bama like it was, but now it's a Georgia who's a defending national champ. I will say, I think the fact that these last two games were close for both the Buckeyes and Michigan presents a little different element, like what Dave was talking about. Throw out, really, more than most years, everything that's happened so far.
I will tell you one thing before we go to break. And DeVere, you played the game. As bad as the fans want to win, the players are the ones that put all the time in. The coaches, no one wants to win more than you guys.
Your legacy as an Ohio State football player is based on what you do to this game. If you're a running back that doesn't score in the Michigan game, you're remembered as a guy who didn't score in the Michigan game. If you're a receiver that's not productive or you're dropping passes and you don't make that third down play, you're going to remember this forever. I mean, there's plays in the Michigan game that I want back, obviously. And so just as a player, you understand how big this is. Earl Bruce would always come in and tell a story about, if you lose, you'll be walking down Pearl Alley and not on High Street. So players understand that your legacy is directly impacted on what you do in this game, Don.
No question. Great stuff, guys. Be sure and keep it on 10 TV. 97.1 The Fan all season long for your Buckeye football coverage.